Hey, what's up, everybody? I know that this is a weird and scary time for a lot of folks out there, and we wanted to give you a snapshot, a glimpse into the Launch Academy experience in the age of COVID-19. And rather than have me kind of do that and walk you through, we thought it'd be best for you to hear from a student that's currently studying with us during the COVID-19 pandemic. So tune in, listen to what Vivian has to say, and I hope that it helps paint a picture for yourself if you're thinking about coming to Launch Academy and being a launcher. Thanks, and I'll check in with you at the end of the video.
So my name is Schwartz. I'm the Career Services Manager at Launch Academy, and I'm chatting with Vivian, who is part of the Boston 28 cohort. And you guys are a little over halfway through right now, so kind of coming towards the latter half of the program.
Yeah.
Obviously you guys actually were kind of lucky in that you had 1 week on campus and then started the remote program right after that. So what was that transition like, being able to come onto campus for a week, kind of see how things were, and then slowly, rather quickly actually, transition into being remote in the second week? What was that transition like?
Yeah, I think I'm really grateful for that week that we got together on campus, because I know a lot of our friendships and that sense of community was built from having that initial week together. With that said, though, I also think that having that week also shows us that our cohort's unity together as a group isn't solely based on that social interaction, because given that we only had a week together, there were only a handful of people that I really had a chance to interact with in person. And now that we are in our 6th week, so we've done the online portion for 5 weeks now, there are so many more people that I've had a chance to interact with on the flip side, because we are remote and we're actively conscious about being good about reaching out to each other and building the sense of community with each other.
That's awesome to hear. What do you think you guys have done that made that work so well? Because I think that's one of the big things. That's kind of a concern if you're planning on having an on-campus program. You're assuming you're going to have this really tight-knit community, and I'm guessing a lot of people think like it's really challenging to do that online. What have you guys done that's made that kind of work for you?
Right. So I think one of the things that's made this cohort successful, as far as what we've done to make sure that we build a good sense of community, is we try to really utilize the 24/7 Zoom channel that the EEs have set up for us, and using it. Yes, we use this sort of to support each other in our coding and also in our learning and helping each other with our questions. But we try to make sure that we also find time to sort of just connect and chat as we would every other morning if we were able to see each other on campus, just to catch up, see how everyone's doing with their family, and sometimes even just chit-chatting about random tangents that we get to from spending time together. And I think that that's so important, where we're building that connection, not just to help each other answer questions, but we are connecting on a personal level.
Cool. So you feel like, in addition to obviously like the professional relationships that you guys are building, there's a kind of social aspect to it as well?
Right. Yeah. And I think that social aspect, in a way, I see it sort of as a circle, right? As we build that social aspect, we sort of feel safer to be vulnerable and to reach out to these people, and trust that when we are feeling discouraged or when we have a moment of imposter syndrome where we need to talk to someone, I think having that social connection is what makes us feel like we're safe to have a conversation with someone, and that it's not just on the professional level where it's like, oh, I have to put up a front and pretend that I understand everything and that everything is making sense to me, because I feel like my cohort mates are my first line of support that I feel safe to turn to when I'm having any self-doubts or any questions.
Right. That's really cool, because I feel like, when you're on campus, obviously you have the support of the staff and everything, and you have that remote too. But when you're on campus and you're kind of in close vicinity to somebody, you can easily just turn to them and say like, hey, I'm stuck on this thing, and kind of, work together for just like 5 minutes even. Are you finding that you're still able to do that sort of thing remotely?
I am, but it's definitely so much more difficult. So that week that we had on campus, it was very natural. I had a cohort mate that we always sat next to each other during that first week, and it was so easy to just turn over to him and talk to him. And even without turning, sometimes I'll be talking out loud to myself, and then he'll be like, yeah, I'm having that same problem too. And so having that proximity definitely made it easier to not only realize when someone else is stuck on the same thing, and so knowing that you're in it together, but also just to naturally have a rubber duck and someone that you can talk out off of. Whereas I think now that we've gone virtual, it's slightly harder because we have to make that additional effort to make sure to reach out to someone when we are having difficulties. I feel like what our cohort also does very well is I think we are very cognizant about making sure to set up situations that sort of that put us at an advantage. So I say that because when we break into pods, or even when we're given an assignment in the afternoon, even if we're not assigned to a particular team or a pair, I feel like our cohort makes the extra effort to message out as a group and say, hey, I'm looking to pair program. Is anyone available for the afternoon to pair up with me? And I think making that additional effort to make sure that you have this option of having someone to pair with, to have a sounding board, is so important, because we don't have that proximity of just turning to someone, or even for someone to notice that you may be struggling and you might just need to rubber duck an idea off of them.
It's really cool. It's cool to hear that, because I think, it sounds like you're still able to get a lot of the same like collaboration with people. It's maybe just you have to kind of do a little more effort to make sure it's happening, right? You have to kind of be open to it and reach out and do all of that to make sure that somebody is going to be there for you to chat with, which is great. Yeah. I guess along those same lines, like, obviously you mentioned pair programming and like working as part of a team and stuff like that. And I think Launch is a very collaborative program in its design. What has it been like using different tools and stuff? Because I know you guys obviously use Zoom a lot, and you're using the VS Code, I forget what it's called, but the virtual pair programming. Like, how has it been using tools like that to simulate, working with somebody right next to them?
It's actually, I feel like this is, as weird as it is to say, right, this is sort of a perk of I think the fact that we've gone virtual and that we aren't on campus together. I think having this opportunity to really familiarize ourselves with tools like Zoom or like VS Code, using the live share function to be able to have multiple people in the same code base and working on it together at the same time. These are tools that I think if we weren't in this specific situation, we might have known about in the back of our minds, but we wouldn't actively have incentive to utilize. So I think it's been great. And I think we're lucky that we are currently in a time where we have this technology and these tools to be able to work fully remote with a group of people. But yeah, I'm particularly grateful that also because of the situation, our cohort is getting this additional opportunity to demonstrate our skills and also to practice our skills in working remote, which is also something that's very likely in the future in our careers.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's actually something I've kind of been thinking a lot about because, from the careers perspective, I agree that I think it's actually kind of a perk because when you are in your positions, things are becoming more and more remote. And obviously it seems like they may become more remote in the future too. So, being able to say on your resume or, an interview that you had this kind of whole experience where you were collaborating with people is great. And I think, even through some of like the interview stuff that people have done in the past, a lot of interviews are done remotely where you're going to pair program with somebody over, VS Code or something like that too. So it's great to kind of have that experience and then, be able to kind of use that moving forward into your careers.
Yeah, I found, so when we first went virtual, when I was pair programming with someone, I would point to my screen and try to reference a block of code or a line of code by gesture, and then realize, right, we're on webcam, so they can't quite see where I'm pointing at. So I think in addition to utilizing this technology, I think I've also really had to hone my skill as far as how to talk about code so that my partner or my team knows exactly what I'm talking about. So being really well versed in, this is actually what we're calling different components or different variables, and using stuff like the line numbers so that I can speak clearly about the code, so that as a team, we know exactly what we're talking about and looking at.
That's really cool. I didn't even think about that, because that's again is like another thing that is going to be so useful when you start interviewing, because that's always, something I think people struggle with, is like, how do I kind of verbalize, what I'm trying to say to somebody who maybe doesn't, is not in my brain and doesn't know what I'm trying to say. And so that's really good practice. That's awesome. So I guess, in kind of a different subject, like, obviously you signed up for a program that you assumed was going to be in person. So when you, thinking back to like that first week, and when you, heard that we were probably going to be going remote, what sort of like concerns did you have about that?
I'm trying to think. So I do think that my main concern was about the community. I know for me, choosing a program at launch was a lot of it due to the fact that I knew that it was a program that understood that our community and the relationship that we had with our cohort mates were integral to our learning. And I think that my biggest concern was missing out on having sort of like-minded people that I would feel supported by. I think at that point, I wasn't concerned about the education portion that was coming from the EEs, because I believe that the program would have had a well thought out plan for this. But I think what was harder to predict was how I would connect with people completely virtual and not having that physical proximity to them. But I think that this does unfortunately come down to individual people, and it comes back to, I'm so grateful to our particular cohort, because I think as a group of people, we all took what was the less than ideal situation, and we all strived to do the best that we could so that we could still stay connected despite being in a more difficult situation.
Yeah, that's great. And it sounds like, I know we've already talked about it quite a bit, but it sounds like that has worked out really well, at least so far.
Yeah.
And we're going into our group projects next week. And so that'll be really interesting to see kind of what collaboration looks like when you are really working with the team and the same team, pretty much all day long for 2 weeks. That'll be kind of cool. So you mentioned the education piece of it and how you weren't really too worried about that. What has that been like? I know you only had a week on campus, and so you only had a few days of, really getting to see kind of the typical launch experience in terms of classes and working with the staff and stuff. But what's the education piece been like for you in terms of like the facilitations and the clinics and, even morning mentor group and that sort of stuff?
Mm-hmm. I feel like the facilitation and clinics, as far as the presentation itself, it doesn't feel too different as far as the content that we're being taught. I think sort of what's different now compared to being virtual versus online, the main portion, I think a lot of it has to do with my own discipline on my end. So I think there's one thing about being on campus, right? On campus, I think that there's a location and also this mindset that you put yourself in where you're on campus, so you're at class, and then there's a certain amount of concentration that you must have. And I think the difficult part about being virtual and being at home is when it's an hour on lecture, you might want to sit down or lie down in bed where it's comfortable, which sometimes can lead to it being a little more more difficult to have that same level of concentration that you would when you're on campus. So I think that an integral part of that is having the discipline to tell yourself, no, like, despite this being an hour-long lecture, like, I should still be sitting at a desk, being in a position where my mindset and my body is going to think that I'm still on campus. With that said, I think what's also more difficult about being virtual compared to having a facilitation or a clinic online is just due to the nature of the microphones. Part of the process is we make sure to mute our microphones until we get to a good stopping point, in which case these will ask if we have any questions, and then we can express our questions one-on-one. Whereas I think sort of what I miss out on is being on campus and sort of having more of this free flow of questions, where sometimes it's great waiting to a stopping point, but at that point the question seems less applicable, or even sometimes it might just be more so a comment that if we were on campus, all of us had at the same time, then we could actually share that. Whereas with it being online, sort of once the moments pass, we sort of move on to the next topic. But otherwise, I feel like for the most part, our smaller groups where with our morning mentor groups, I think since it is a smaller group, I feel like the discussion itself doesn't seem to be particularly different compared to what it was like on campus, since then at that point it's easier for us to jump into shared conversations about any successes or struggles we may have had with the homework the night before.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think, it sounds like depending on the format and how many people are there, it kind of dictates whether or not you can have that more conversational sort of flow to your classes versus the kind of like, needing to just wait until there's a good stopping point, which I guess makes sense. And I think, what you're saying at the beginning about kind of discipline and stuff, it sounds like that's something that everybody kind of struggles with when you start working from home, right? And it's definitely important to like have that workspace and know that like when I'm here, I'm doing work. Because it is easy to fall into that trap of like, I'm just going to lie down and, relax a little bit. Cool. So, yeah, I mean, I think, that really gave a lot of kind of perspective into, what it's been like for you. Is there anything, that didn't come up while we were chatting that you kind of wanted to share or wanted to talk about? And if not, that's fine.
No, I think that covered a lot. I think I would just say I know that I've talked about this, but I sort of just want to really reiterate that it's so important. I think especially with being virtual and sort of in some ways being on this alone, right? Where you're not in close proximity to your cohort mates, to just be very vocal about reaching out to people. I think never feel like you're a bother. I think as a cohort together, we all want each other to succeed. And so if ever you feel like you have a question or you just need someone to talk to, I think the cohort is always open to that. So it's just being really open about reaching out to people.
Well, there you have it. First-hand experience from one of our awesome launchers. No matter what's going on in the world, there are a few things that are always going to be constant about Launch Academy. Number one is we're always going to deliver a remarkable educational experience, regardless of what's going on in the world. Two, we're going to be there for you. It's enough to go through this challenging learn to code journey, but during the time of COVID-19, all kinds of weird and scary and unique situations are occurring. We want to be there and be supportive for you. And third, we're always going to connect you with the job outcome. We're going to work to find out what is in demand, what hiring companies are looking for to make sure that you are marketable when you come out on the other side. If you are inspired by this video, if Vivian's story really spoke to you, I'd encourage you to sign up for an informational call, right? Talk to our co-founder, Evan Charles, and learn more about our program and learn more about what it is to be a launcher. Thanks, and I'm looking forward to get to know you better.